Okay, so let's make sure that the player bar doesn't go out of bounds for us, right? We don't want the player to be able to move the bar all the way out of the scene, right? That wouldn't be very fun. So I think that the first thing we want to figure out is, let me just reset this to 0, okay? The first thing we need to know is, well, how far do we want the player to go, right? So let me just look at this from this back angle. Make sure it's in the orthographic view, and just let's just kind of visually eye it. So this is probably the closest to the left we want the player to be able to go, and it's roughly about -15 on the x-axis. So -15. Let's remember that number, okay? And let's go to the other side. -15, and this side, suppose it's about 19. I think we'll allow the player to go into it a little bit. 19. 19 is good. 15, I think that's fine. Okay, so between between -15 and 19, that's the x position we want to restrict this bar to. Okay, now let's go to the state machine for the player bar, and we've got the control here, and then I'm not going to touch them, except I'm going to change the space from self to world. It doesn't make a difference right now, but it's good to keep that consistent because I'm going to be using world space now. Okay, and let's think about this. So basically what we need to do is we want to tell the system if the x position of this object is greater than it's smaller than -15, then we want to reset it back to -15. And if the position is bigger than 19, for example, now it's in 21, we want to make sure that we move it back to 19. We don't want it to go over. Right? So that's the basic idea. That's what we're going to do here. So first, let's define some events. Right? So let's say x is too small. Actually, let's use lowercase x. X is too small. And another event is x is too big. Right. You might not need two, but I like to keep things sort of separate. Okay. So we'll have these two events. X is too small, x is too big. And then what do we do when the x position is too big or too small? We want to reset x. Right, so that's the state. And once we reset it, we're going to go back to the movement state. Right. So once our job is done, here we can go back to the way things are. Okay, so that's the basic setup. Now let's go into the actions. Right. So here, the first thing I want to do is I want to find the location of this bar, the current location. Whenever the game is running, I need that information. So let's go to variables. Right. Let's define a variable called x position. That's the variable that's going to hold that information for me. And let's go to actions and get position. Now this action will allow you to convert your current position to a variable. You'll assign that value to a variable. So get position, and all we care about is the x variable, x position. So I'm going to save x to x position, and I want to make sure that we do this every frame. So we don't just want to do this once, we want to get the current position of the object, right? So we want it to run every frame, and as you can see, I'm setting this to the world space. Same thing here, just we want to make sure it's consistent. in this case. Okay, now I have the X position. And the next thing I need to do is compare this X position to the boundaries, the numbers we just discovered, to see if it's too big or too small, right? So let's go back to Action Browser, and we're going to do a float compare. Okay, here, a float compare basically compares the float variable, which in this case is the X position, to another number, and we've discovered that we don't want it to be smaller than -15, so we put -15 down there. And what do we want to do when the X position is smaller than -15? So the float compare, you can use this to send different events depending on if these numbers are equal, or if the second one is less than the first one, or if the second one is greater than the first one. Now in this case we want to check when the X position is smaller than -15. Then I think the X is too small, right? That's when the object is way too far to the left, right? So we're going to send the X is too small event. Okay, and we want to check that every frame as well. Okay, so that's how we find out if it's too small. Now we do the same thing: float compare. And in this case, same thing, we compare X position to, what was the number, 19, I believe. So to the right side is 19. And if it's too big, send the X is too big event. So when X position is greater than 19, we send the X is too big event. Scroll up. When the X position is less than -15, we send the X is too small event. Now I'm going to make sure this is running every frame as well. Okay, so let's just give that a quick test, just to see that these events are working. Right. I am going to disable the ball right now, because if we don't catch the ball, it's going to restart the game, and it's going to affect the way we test it. So I'm disabling the ball for now, because I just want to test this. Okay, let's play. Okay, and we're in this movement state, we're just waiting for input to move the object. So it's moving, and we can see that the X position, the variable X position, is changing and it's matching the number here. Right, so in get position, we are grabbing this X position and assigning that number to this variable here. Right, okay, so that's working, it's good. And right now we're at -5, which is still bigger than -15, so we're good. Let's keep moving and see what happens when we go to -15. And the program is crashing. Why? Because I've accidentally created an infinite loop. Now, an infinite loop is basically describing a situation where the program is stuck doing the same things over and over and over again. And that's not cool. Now, in Playmaker, it stops you from doing that. But let me just explain what just happened. Let's stop the game. So from here, I have, well, when the X position is smaller than -15, we're going to go to reset X. And there's nothing here. So it directly goes to the finished event, which comes back to the movement state. And since we haven't done anything to change the X position was still smaller than -15, so it sends the event back it sends us back to the reset X state, which then finish the state and send us back to movement. So you can see that the system just continues to send us back and forth between these two, and there's no way to get out of it because we're not making any changes. So let's delete this transition. to avoid that infinite loop. And as you can see, Playmaker tells you possible infinite loop. So it sort of stops you from getting into this infinite loop. Usually when you have an infinite loop, you'll have to restart Unity because the system just doesn't know what to do with this stuff. It just keeps repeating the same things. Okay, anyways, so let's remove that event. So we just want to know that, when the x is too big or too small, is it actually going to go to this state? Let's try that again. Okay, so movement, that's good. You can see that again, variable matching the value here. And when it goes to -15, right, so it's the position is less than -15, right, it goes to the x is too small event and sends it to the reset x state, which is what we wanted. So I'm gonna do the same test on the right hand side as well, just to make sure that we've got that covered. So I'm gonna collapse this. We're just gonna look at this action here. Right, so okay, I'm moving to the right. The position is increasing on the x-axis. Okay, I'm getting close to 19, and as soon as I hit 19, as soon as I get bigger than 19, it goes to this state. Okay, great. That's what we wanted. Save. So in reset x position, reset x state, what we want to do is we want to reset it. So we want to reset the x position to in between -15 and 19, so it doesn't go over the walls. So there is a very handy action here. Let's go to action browser, float. Actually, let's go to the math section, math, and then there are a whole bunch of actions related to math that we can use. And the one that we're most interested in is called float clamp. Float clamp. Now it says clamps the value of float variable to a minimum and maximum range. So the great thing about this is you can check your variable and see if the value is in between two numbers. And if it's not, then this action will set it to the closest value of the two. Right. So we want the minimum value to be -15 and the maximum value to be 19. Right. That's the boundary, the value of the two boundaries we've found out. So if x position is less than -15, it's going to automatically reset it to -15. If x position is bigger than the max value here, let's say if x position is 20, then this action will set it back to 19. So that's really handy. Now, that's not all we want to do, because once we reset the position to in between these two numbers, we want to apply that new position to the object. Right, so if we just do this, right, let's see. Right, so okay, I'm gonna keep moving left. Okay, now you can see that we went past -15, so we were at -15.35, and we went to the state. It resets the x position, the variable x position, which is this variable here, but we need to apply this new value back to the position of the object, right? Because right now it's just a number stored in this container, in this x position, but other than that, it's not actually doing us any good because it's not applied to the object. So let's do exactly that. Set position, and let's grab the x position and apply it to the actual x here, right? Remember, this x position is a variable inside the state machine, and we need to apply this number to this here. Again, let's use the world coordinate. And that's it. Let's add a finished state to go back. So once we reset the position then you are allowed to move the bar again. I'm going to save and give that a quick test. Okay, now moving left, you can see that as soon as I hit -15, it's going to stop. And it's going to reset my position to -15 because I have this float clamp there. Now I can keep moving to the right, and again, when I hit that number, it's going to stop me from moving any further. So that's good. That's how we limit the movement of the player. Now let's enable the ball again and just give it a play. I've disabled the game audio for you just because I don't want it to distract you. But you can see that I can't move over there, and I think that the game is it's looking pretty good. I'm happy with this.